ingenuity, hard work, strong. The people of East Tennessee are connected to the land. They have fought, loved, lived, and tilled the soil. Everyone who calls this home is part of that history. And that history is told on East Tennessee PBS. Become a member of East Tennessee PBS today.
Of August, Tennessee's celebration of emancipation has been made possible through the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you. And by Beck Cultural Exchange Center, the place where African American history is preserved. And the East Tennessee Historical Society, making history personal. The 8th of August is Tennessee's celebration of emancipation, once thought to be limited to a few communities in East Tennessee, Newport, Knoxville, Greenville. We understand the roots of this event migrated to at least 6 states, to over 50 communities, and has been celebrated in one form or another for over 150 years. The 8th of August is commemorated through stories, dances, picnics, athletic events, and barbecues. But at its heart, the 8th is the journey of one small group of slaves from bondage to freedom. These slaves were owned by one man, a tailor turned politician from Greenville, Tennessee, Andrew Johnson.
Andrew Johnson was actually born in Raleigh, North Carolina, December 29, 1808, to very poor but upstanding citizens of Raleigh. Unfortunately, Johnson's father dies when Andrew Johnson is only 3 years old, and that leaves his mother very impoverished. As a means to make ends meet and to give the boys better potential for a future, she apprentices them to a tailor in Raleigh, but before long, they have run away from their apprenticeship. Johnson travels around South Carolina, Tennessee, even parts of Alabama before he returns to Raleigh to get his mother. He tries to settle things with the former tailor, who was no longer interested really in the affair. So Johnson decided on a new life in the frontier, and the frontier in those days was over the Appalachian Mountains, and he settled here in Greenville, Tennessee. He probably was passing through Greenville, but 2 rather important things happened. One, he was noticed by a group of girls, one of whom told her girlfriends, "There goes my beau girls market," and it was Eliza McCardle. He did go on to Rutledge, Tennessee for a little while and worked there, but before long the town tailor here had gone out of business, so Johnson within the year came back, opened his shop, married the girl. His tailor shop soon became a thriving place of business. Local townspeople enjoyed coming and talking to Andrew Johnson, and they started debating. He was invited to join the debate team, and he was so good at it that some of his peers told him he should run for alderman. He did, and he won it. So that was the beginning of his nearly 45 years in public service. Andrew Johnson held nearly every political office that you can hold on the way to the presidency, from alderman, mayor, state representative and senator, U.S. representative and senator, governor of Tennessee. And through it all, you see slavery mentioned in speeches. You see evolving ideas about slavery until later on in his career, you see a gradual emancipationist starting to form.
Johnson had a unique approach to politics. He was popular with tradesmen, he was popular with common people, and this wasn't something that was really done in those days. He was able to take ideas, distill them down to where everybody could understand them and support them or even disagree with them. And this was something that the elite of the day, especially in politics, wasn't used to dealing with. They didn't really believed that you could take ideas sometimes and distill them down to a simple message, and this led to a lot of conflict between Johnson and those politicians. It meant that he made a lot of enemies.
The upper class of Dixie is an illegitimate, swaggering, bastard, scrub aristocracy who assumed to know a good deal, but who, when the flimsy veil of pretension was worn off from it, was shown to possess neither talents, information, or a foundation on which you can rear a superstructure that would be useful. Andrew Johnson.
In that day and age, politics was a rough and tumble sport, and Johnson made a lot of enemies. Some of the things he did angered people, and he was a politician that when he went into office, he had opposition. They really didn't like him, and he didn't like them.
If Andy Johnson was a snake, he would hide in the grass and bite the heels of rich men's children. Eshan G. Harris, Governor of the state of Tennessee.
After leaving office in Greenville as mayor, he gets elected to the legislature. He starts spending a lot of time over in Nashville, and his wife Eliza is sickly. He's got children at home, and so he buys 2 young slaves to help with the chores at the house. And back then in the state of Tennessee, slavery was sort of an upside down statistic. Basically everywhere it was, where most slaves would live on plantations. Most of your slave owners owned 1 or 2 slaves, and they worked alongside the landowners, especially in East Tennessee where you didn't have the big plantations.
So far as I'm concerned, if it suited him and his inclination led him that way, I wish to God every head of a family in the United States had one to take the drudgery and menial service off his family. Andrew Johnson.
Andrew Johnson bought Dolly in 1842, and within a short time, he returned to purchase her brother, Sam.
My mother was a good-looking woman. Her owner sold her at a big auction at Greenville, Tennessee. She looked around the crowd of buyers before the auction, and she saw Andrew Johnson and liked his looks. So she went up to him and asked him if he wouldn't buy her. He bid her in for $500, and he bought my uncle, her brother, for $540. I hadn't been born yet when that happened. William Johnson.
1857, Johnson gets elected to the U.S. Senate and steps onto the national stage, really for the first time. And he does well in there as far as legislation and deal making, and all the rough and tumble things he had learned as a politician in Tennessee could really be applied on a national level. When the war breaks out, the Civil War breaks out in 1861, he was the only Southern senator to hold his seat in Congress. And by 1862, though, his term had expired. And President Lincoln didn't want to see him go to waste because him and Lincoln had developed sort of a working relationship. So Lincoln decides to appoint him a military governor, gives him the rank of brigadier general, and sends him to Nashville. Johnson's term as military governor was very heavy-handed. He would throw people in jail who spoke out against the Union. He closed anti-Union newspapers. And if a preacher gave a speech on Sunday that was pro-Confederate or anti-Union, he often found himself in jail on Monday. And East Tennessee was still, part of the Confederacy at this time. Nashville and Memphis, they had more or less been pulled back into the Union fold. And Johnson worked to get Tennessee completely withdrawn out of the Confederacy. And in 1863, Emancipation comes up, because what was supposed to be a picnic battle that was over in a few hours in 1861, it cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And the real principal cause for the whole war was keeping the Union together. But now they brought forth this moral cause of ending slavery. And basically Lincoln and Johnson had started moving towards the Emancipation platform. And as a show of faith, Johnson got Tennessee exempted from the Emancipation Proclamation because he wanted Tennessee on its own to adopt a constitution that abolished slavery. And as a show of good faith, he released his own slaves.
Johnson probably owned a little over 10 slaves. When the Confederacy took over East Tennessee, they were confiscated. The Confederate States of America passed a confiscation law for those who supported the United States, and so was able to confiscate their property. We don't know exactly what happened to them after that until sometime in the summer of 1863, 2 adult slaves escaped and got through Confederate lines and were taken to Johnson in Nashville. At that point, when Johnson was reunited with 2 of his adult slaves, he told them he would hire them, which was in effect freeing them because he's paying them, not treating them as slaves. The rest of his slaves were liberated when the Federal Army got into East Tennessee. They did not want to stay there and wait. They wanted to rejoin him in Nashville, and his brother-in-law was sent to bring them.
I was born into slavery under Andrew Johnson. One day, Miss Johnson called us all in and said we were free now. She said we were free to go, or we could stay if we wanted to. We all stayed. William Johnson, slave of Andrew Johnson.
Samuel Johnson was my great-great-grandfather, and he was my father's grandmother's dad. And Samuel started the 8th of August once he got freed.
Greenville was where the 8th of August originated with the freeing of Andrew Johnson's first 8 to 10 slaves. And that has remained a strong tradition here ever since. The earliest documented evidence that we have of the 8th of August celebration is from a newspaper article of 1871.
Celebration at Greenville. The colored people of Greenville had a celebration at that place yesterday. A procession was formed in the following order. First, Officer of the Day, Sam Johnson, late a slave of President Johnson. Second, Greenville Brass Band in 4-horse wagon, horses suitably bedecked with flags and etc. Third, citizens in wagons, buggies, carriages, on horseback and on foot. Afterwards, the colored Sabbath school of the city, children also formed in procession, carrying the American flag in front. They all marched out from town some distance when they were addressed by ex-President Johnson, Colonel Bob Crawford, and others. President Johnson went out about 11 o'clock in a 2-horse buggy in company with several other gentlemen. The procession commenced moving at 9 o'clock down Irish Street to Main and on to Tusculum College, near which the speaking and picnic exercises were held. The Knoxville Chronicle, August 9th, 1871.
We know that this celebration had been going on and had become a very strong tradition here in East Tennessee with African Americans. In fact, I would say that it was Black Independence Day in Tennessee.
The 8th of August is our region's answer to or parallel to what's known in much of the country as Juneteenth. Juneteenth, it grew out of Texas. It's June the 19th, and it's celebrated as Emancipation Day. In our region, the 8th of August is celebrated as Emancipation Day. And for a long time, many people in East Tennessee thought that the 8th of August had only been celebrated in 2 or 3 different communities, Newport, Greenville, Knoxville. But then over the last few years, we've come to realize that the 8th of August has been celebrated at least at some point in 6 states and over 50 communities and over 150 years.
As people migrated from East Tennessee, the 8th of August went with them. Celebrations began to show up in places like Paducah, Detroit, and Chicago, all while Emancipation commemorations continued in Tennessee. In 1897, 500 people take an excursion train from Knoxville and travel to Johnson City. The Knoxville Sentinel says in 1899, the first known 8th of August celebration is held in Knoxville. A year later, 3,500 people come to Knoxville from as far away as Birmingham, Chattanooga, and Asheville, North Carolina to attend. In 1921, on its 50-year anniversary, The Journal and Tribune credited ex-slave Sam Johnson for creating and propagating the 8th of August. Negroes plan programs at Chestnut View Park today. Emancipation Day will be fittingly observed by the Negro race in Knoxville today. The principal programs will be given at Chestnut View Park and Smitty's Hall, East Vine Avenue, where several addresses will be delivered. In most states, January 1st is observed as Emancipation Day, but in Tennessee and a few other states, August 8th has been designated as the date for Emancipation Day exercises. This custom originated because Negroes owned by Andrew Johnson at Greenville were set free on August 8th, and Sam Johnson, one of the former slaves of Andrew Johnson, worked for a long time and was successful in having August 8th set aside for Emancipation Day.
I moved to Greenville about 2 years old, and we moved here from Western North Carolina. But one thing that we noticed is this 8th of August celebration that we knew nothing about. And we said, well, what is the 8th of August? And they said, well, this was when the slaves were freed. And so at that point, I said, oh yeah, great. And so people would celebrate. They would celebrate with maybe a picnic on the 8th of August. The following Sunday, there would be big programs at the various churches in the African American community. But usually on the evening of the 8th of August, there would be a big dance. And people would celebrate in that way. Venues large enough for such a celebration for African Americans was the tobacco warehouses, and the one in particular was Bernard's number 2, which is adjacent to the Andrew Johnson home, and sort of appropriate since President Johnson was pretty much responsible for this celebration, that it would be close to his home.
Although blacks in Tennessee were free from slavery, they were not free from segregation. In Knoxville, the 8th of August was the one day a year blacks were allowed to visit Chilhowie Park.
Everybody in every community would celebrate that day. The anticipation, like you said, was just there. You talked about it. It was almost like Christmas. 2 more days and we'll be ready to go to the park. Oh, I can't wait. And everybody in the community had that same kind of excitement about coming.
August the 7th, boy, we were really getting ready. We were washing our little tennis shoes, washing our shoestrings, hanging them on the line because we didn't have a dryer then. We barely had a washing machine. Oh, we were so excited. It was just like a brand new everything for us. And we would dress and Mother would put little ribbons in our hair, and away we would go to Chilhowie Park for the 8th of August.
Everybody in the community came to Chilhowie Park for that big day, 8th of August.
Yeah, I can remember, before the interstates, we had to come on the, I think it's Highway 25 or something, on through Corbin, Kentucky and all, and then, come here, and if you came on the train, it was 12 hours. If you drove, it was 12 hours. So
it was something to look forward to, because in our lives there was not a lot to look forward to in celebrations like that. So it was just a big day for us, and you would see so many people. You could see some of your relatives that you hadn't seen in quite a while. They would be at the park, and it was always so exciting just to know that we were getting to come to the park, because that was the only day we could go to the park. And so it was so many people here at the time. So many blacks were here, and not only from Knoxville, the whole surrounding area where black people lived. And it would just be packed.
And people from everywhere, Mechanicsville, Park City as we call it, which is Burlington, and some people would be from in that area. And we were just one big happy family.
The first thing when we got up, we could hear my mother preparing the food. She, like I said, she's gonna always have bologna on mustard, and she'd wrap it up in not aluminum foil, but wax paper. I can remember that wax paper. And then she would always fry chicken, enough for everybody to have as much as they wanted. And you could smell it. That's the first thing, the aroma of the chicken got you all excited. And she'd devil some eggs, and she'd make a pound cake that would just melt in your mouth.
One thing is that picnic lunch. I mean, it was just something about it that you look forward to, have those little sandwiches in there, sometimes bologna sandwich, but my mom would always fry bologna, and we have deviled eggs and potato salad, and we just had a good time.
Oh, honey, the corn dogs was, ooh, and the cotton candy.
Well, they had hot dogs, cotton candy, caramel apples. They had all the unhealthy food that you wanted.
And with my cousins, there were 4 of them, and then their mother, and maybe a couple of aunts who were there, but we all had the same table. And we would just spread the table out, and they would sit there, the parents would, and this was just our little station. And they would put the food on the table, and they'd give us our money to go buy tickets to ride. And then they'd tell us to be back at a certain time for lunch. And then we got back to the picnic table at that time to eat lunch. We'd gobble the food down real quickly, and back out we went to ride the rides.
My cousin would put me on those kind of rides, and she'd be standing down there looking at me, and I'd be hollering and screaming top of my lungs because I wanted off of them. But you know what they would do? They would run the wheel a little bit longer the person because I was making it exciting for the other people to get on the rides. I was helping them make money.
But the one that I did like was the Dodge cars, because I like to bump into other people with it.
Never did like the Ferris wheels because I was afraid of heights, so that kind of counted me out,
In Cocke County, Tennessee, the 8th of August is referred to as the Tennessee Picnic. This celebration is a homecoming for families and friends to reunite and to reflect.
The Tennessee Picnic originated from fathers having to leave Newport, Tennessee to go to Detroit to get jobs. And so that's where they started that. It started that in Detroit.
Most people felt like it was a black holiday, even though it may not have been a legal national holiday, but they felt like that was the black holiday, the 8th of August.
My mother, I used to have to take her over because she'd be the first one over getting set up, feed food and stuff. And I used to argue with her about won't she wait and get some of the other members to help you on this, but no, she had to do it herself.
They'd stay up all night doing all the cooking. They cooked enough food. I don't know how they ever done it to know that there was going to be enough food, have enough food to eat. But that table would be packed with different kinds of food. Greens, people didn't raise their gardens, green beans, tomatoes, just whatever you wanted, it was there.
They would prepare like fish, turtle, mud turtle, goat, chicken and dumplings, granny wood, ball custard, pound cakes. Man, they just had everything.
But they just had one day way back then. Picnic, they'd have a picnic. Like I said, they'd have a dance at night somewhere. I remember one time over at the town of school, if I'm not mistaken, Percy Sledge was over for a dance.
Me and my friend danced so much that you thought we was drunk because we danced that hard. They used to have baseball games. Teams would come from out of town to play on that day. They would schedule other teams to come, that black teams. Just playing in the park mainly, that's all we had to do. I made up games, and they would have just games for the kids.
That was one of the only times that we could go to our city park to go swimming. After they went swimming, they would drain the pool and put new water in the pool.
When it came Tennessee Picnic time, different faces always showed up, And for as now today's families are bringing their children back here, so your tradition won't die. Because we had to consider one point in time that we considered to discontinue the Tennessee Picnic because we weren't getting the cooperation that we did. And once the community found that out, they came aboard, and we must have the Tennessee Picnic. We couldn't let the Tennessee Picnic die.
The tradition across the state has somewhat dwindled to just celebrating here in East Tennessee, primarily Newport, Greenville, Johnson City. And of late, there's been interest, there's been a resurgence in the Knoxville area. I think the future of this celebration is important for us to continue to pass it on to our youth, not only African American youth, but to all the youth, especially here in Tennessee. I think this is a wonderful American story.
We've had a good response from the community. Families are bringing their children back here so the tradition won't die.
Well, I think that any race of people really should know about their history. It makes a difference in their life, and you never know what young people, what difference it will make.
Once you lose your history, it's gone. And we are losing our elder people, and we're burying our history with them. So I always like to find photographs and find documentation. You know, we just have bits and pieces of history stuck away. A lot of these photographs that I've collected, I think that we need to document our history more than we have been.
Some of the things that I've heard I didn't know. I've even learned as old as I am things about the 8th of August that I didn't know. So I think it's very, very significant that we continue to do this because I think that our children need to know about the celebration. And people of other races don't even know about the celebration. They would love to know this and can't imagine that we were denied those kind of rights. Some people don't think that's right.
Enjoyed annually by thousands who choose to remember their collective past, this event celebrates the people who made emancipation possible and provides future generations with a historical context to continue their struggle for freedom and equal rights. The 8th of August is Tennessee's celebration of emancipation. of August, Tennessee's celebration of emancipation has been made possible through the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you. And by Beck Cultural Exchange Center, the place where African American history is preserved. And the East Tennessee Historical Society, making history personal.